Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in, and welcome to the second session of our Social Media Accessibility Basics series, created by Sharina Huntsman, Lane Amaro, and myself, Angela Fairbanks. This is a collaborative effort with the ADA 30 Idaho virtual campaign celebrating 30 years of the Americans with Disabilities Act, featuring independence and accessibility. In our last session, Lane introduced you to some of the basics of social media accessibility. In this session, I'll be introducing you to plain language principles and showing you how to write headlines and captions that are accessible and memorable for a broader audience. Let's get into our presentation. Social Media Accessibility Basics, Writing with Plain Language. First, let's talk about what plain language actually is. It's not a tool in an app or a setting on a computer. It's a technique for writing content that your audience will understand and remember the first time they read it. Plain language is relevant in everything from classroom syllabi to international public policy. In fact, in 2010, the US government introduced the Federal Plain Writing Act. I've got a quote up here on screen for you. This stated that all official documents, including policy proposals, budget reviews, other complex reports, must be clear, concise, and well organized for anybody who's going to be reading it. Plain language is extremely useful when you're trying to reach a really broad audience, which is why it's significant in news reporting and product marketing too. Social media is notorious for being whiz-bang, fast-paced, 140 characters sort of stuff. So it's also really useful in building bigger communities on social media around shared interests. Some of our audience members might be involved in communities around dance, sports, beauty, food. The list goes on and on. So let's go through the top reasons social media accounts of any size should be using plain language in their posts. First, more readers can understand your message. The broader audience you reach, the more different kinds of people who will be reading your message, who will be coming from more different kinds of backgrounds. Second, readers can understand your message more quickly. This is especially useful for those of us who are flipping through Instagram while standing next to the stove waiting for our water to boil. Third, your readers can remember and use your message more effectively once they move on. This is most useful in communities where you're sharing instructional information, like recipes. You want your audience to be able to remember what they saw when they put their phone down and go stand in front of the cutting board. Next, we'll go over some practical tips for using plain language when you write. Then, we'll take a look at a short example and edit a statement to use plain language principles. First, know and write for your audience. Be clear and concise, and make sure to keep it conversational. This is especially important with social media posts. When relevant, organize your information clearly with descriptive titles and sections, or hashtags. For example, if you're having a sponsored post on your social media account today, you want to make sure that you are using hashtag ad, hashtag sponsorship, making sure that you have labeled your information as clearly as possible for your audience. 3. Design for the reader and follow web accessibility standards. As more and more platforms incorporate accessibility tools into their apps and websites, creating accessible social media posts is becoming easier than ever. Tip number 4, consider and test your assumptions about how your audience interprets your content. For example, more and more audiences are looking for videos with subtitles and captions so that they can watch those videos, standing in line at the grocery store, without having to turn up their volume or pull out their headset. Before we jump into our example, I'm going to give you some quick tips for choosing your words carefully and writing captions and headlines that align with plain language principles. First, use familiar and common words and phrases. This plays into knowing your audience and writing as though you're having a conversation. Second, minimize abbreviations and definitions. Including these in your writing is just going to slow your reader down. Third, avoid jargon. You want to find common names for discipline-specific words. In our example, the muscles biceps femoris, semimembranosus, and semitendinosus are just going to collectively become the hamstrings. Let's jump into our example. This statement might go alongside a video describing useful strength training exercises for distance runners. Distance runners need to pay special attention to their biceps femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus, the muscles that prevent the knee from hyperextending during a stride. This statement uses a couple of very discipline-specific words, things that people who have studied personal training, physical therapy, or medicine might be most familiar with. It also describes something called hyperextension of the knee, but doesn't really tell us anything more about that. So, let's revise the statement using plain language principles. We can refer to those three muscles as one group, just called the hamstrings. We really want our audience to know that neglecting their hamstrings can lead to a significant injury that will take them out of their race. We don't have to call it hyperextension. We don't have to use any specific words. We can just tell them that this is going to help you prevent a knee injury. So our revised statement reads this way. If you're a distance runner, don't forget strength training for your hamstrings. These muscles help protect your knees during your runs. This statement uses a familiar word to describe a familiar part of their body and gets the point across that this is important advice. This is important information that you need to incorporate to make sure that your running practice is as effective and safe as possible. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Be sure to check out the other videos that we've included in our Social Media Accessibility Basics series for more tips and strategies for helping us create a more accessible and inclusive culture on social media.